ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी। मुखं करोति वाचालं अंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So I'd like to welcome all of you. So we are currently in our journey on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This chapter is entitled in Sanskrit Sankhya Yoga. It's also a summary study of the entire Bhagavad Gita. We have covered in the last couple of classes up to verse 37, I think 38. I'm not sure whether we discussed 38 or not, but we will nonetheless continue from 38 onwards. Krishna has already explained to Arjuna the basic science of spiritual knowledge. He has explained to him how the living entity is essentially spiritual, is transcendental, is beyond body, is beyond the body, and is beyond matter. And he has also explained to Arjuna how it is actually in Arjun's best interest to actually fight the battle, irrespective of the outcome. And Krishna goes to great length to argue, to make Arjuna understand that independent of the outcome, fighting is in Arjuna's interest, because even if Arjuna does not win, even if he is killed, he will go to heaven, because he will be killed in the course of discharging his duty, which is to fight a holy war. So Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna from the perspective of duty. He's trying to make him understand that do not think that for you fighting is sin. Krishna actually tells him quite the opposite. He says for you not fighting is sin. Why? Because not performing prescribed duty is a sin. Sometimes people think that sin means I must do something, but not necessarily always the case, right? Sometimes not doing something when you should be doing something is also sin, isn't it? When Draupadi was being disrobed, Dushasan was doing something, all others were not doing something. Obviously, Dushasan was punished and karmically implicated for what he was doing, but all those who did not do but should have done also got implicated. So that is the nature of karma. Karma is very subtle. And karma can be incurred even by inaction. Inaction means not performing your prescribed duties. So Krishna is convincing Arjun that please understand this is your duty. You should be happy that you have an opportunity to fight like this. So please proceed. The outcome in either case is going to be auspicious for you. And that is why he concludes this section. In verse 38, the Lord says, do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. Now, this is something very interesting. Krishna has been speaking about duty, but suddenly, if you notice in this verse, in verse 38, he also adds another clause. He doesn't say just to Arjuna that Arjuna, you should fight. Of course, he's been telling you should fight, but he also adds one more thing which he hasn't mentioned earlier. He says, you should fight, but don't consider happiness, distress, loss, or gain, victory or defeat. Why? Because if you fight like this, you will never incur sin. So Krishna is already hinting to Arjun about the upcoming section that he's going to talk about. Now Krishna is going to step up the spiritual discussion to a level higher. How is he going to step up? He's going to step up because all this while, of course, initially he spoke about you're not the body, you're the soul. Then he spoke about performance of duties. Generally, most people who are religious in this world, they are focused on these two things only. They have some theoretical understanding of I am not the body, I am a soul. And based on that understanding, they have some sense that after death, I will go somewhere and I have to do good activities, then I'll go to heaven. If I do bad activities, I will go to hell. If I do good activities, I'll get good karma, then I can enjoy better. So based on what has been discussed so far, one may easily misunderstand that it is ultimately all about just performing one's material duties nicely. In that way, I can be happy here and I can be happy in the next life. And if you see, most of the people in this world who subscribe to religion in some sort, I'm not talking about those who are spiritual, those who are religious, most of them are actually in this category. They accept that there is something beyond this body. But ultimately, they think that ultimately I have to do good so that I can enjoy nicely, either in this world or in another world. Heaven. Of course, Krishna has already explained that heaven is also a temporary material place. And that is not actually the goal of life. Actually, that is not even a desirable state. Why is that not a desirable state? Because even if one goes to heaven, or even if one achieves great success in this world, like what we discussed, everywhere in this material world are places of misery. One cannot actually escape from suffering simply by performing good work. So some people think if I perform all good activities, then I will be actually so happy in this world. I must focus on doing good work. Of course, we are not against good work. Yes, we must do good work. But if you do good work with a fruitive intention, with an intention to enjoy in this material world, then actually you are not paving the way for happiness, but you are paving the way for simply perpetuating your bondage and suffering in this world. And Krishna explains that in verse 39. And he gives him a hint. In verse 39, Krishna says, Esham te abhihita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. That Arjun, all this while I was explaining to you about the Sankhya knowledge, which is about the distinction between matter and soul through an analytical study. Now I will explain to you. I've hinted to you about becoming free from sin. Now I will explain to you the process by which you can act in such a way, based on proper knowledge, you can act in such a way that you will not be tied up or bound by your activities. Rather, you can be free from all bondage. This is very important. Because Arjun, it is not just about doing your duties nicely. Even if you do your duties nicely, that doesn't lead to unalloyed happiness. In fact, Arjun, it is not possible in this world to be perfectly good. The nature of this world and the nature of dualities in this world is there will always be a mixture. No matter how hard you try to be perfectly good, you can't. The nature of this world is even if you have all good intention and even if you put all good efforts, the reality is sometimes we try to be very good in one situation, in one place to one set of people, and there is a consequence of that, that some other set of people are unhappy and upset with us, isn't it? Yeah, and both parties are important for us. We try to make one party happy, the other party becomes upset. And that is the nature of the material world. Because material world, you cannot make all people happy all the time. In fact, most of the times, we make most people unhappy. We can at most make a few people happy. Also, the nature of this world is no matter how hard we try to do activities perfectly, if we are performing activities at a material level, activities will always have some fault. And there are many examples from scriptures. We do not have time to go into those pastimes. But even after making every attempt to do activities properly, there's a beautiful story of King Nirga. Maybe you should Google and look up. It's in the Krishna book also, how he was so great and charitable. But in spite of his best effort to do good, how because of one of the cows straying from one group to another group, how he got caught into a conflict which was actually not created by him. And he actually got cursed. So the nature of the world is that you get dragged into problematic situations, even though you don't want to. The other thing about this world is, even if we are able to, even theoretically, let us say, actually you cannot, but let us say we manage that part of doing all our duties perfectly. Even then, even in our basic day-to-day activities, we cannot avoid sin and violence to some extent. Of course, we can avoid animal killing, we can avoid being violent to other human beings. Yes, at that level, yes. But there are so many activities in our day-to-day living where sin is committed at every step. The scriptures mention a few. Example one, when we walk. Do we commit violence when we walk?
Yes.
Yes, correct?
Yes.
We do. So many ants, so many insects, we get crushed when we walk. How careful can you be? Of course, we should try to be careful. If we know, then we should not consciously do. But no matter how hard we try, can we avoid fully? When we eat, aren't we eating ultimately living entities? Even if we eat plants and fruits and grains, isn't there some violence in that process also? Even when we drink water, there are microorganisms who get killed. Isn't there some violence there also? When we cook, we light a fire. In that fire, so many organisms around it get killed. Isn't that violence also? Even when we broom and sweep our house, So many organisms get killed. Is there violence there or not? This is mentioned in the scripture. This is not me making this up. These examples are mentioned in scripture. Even when we breathe, let's say I decide, I don't want to cook, I don't want to drink, I don't want to walk. How to stop breathing? Even when we breathe, microbes are being killed. So some people, some paths try to, maximize non-violence, through trying to inhibit these activities as far as possible. But Bhagavad Gita gives a different solution. Bhagavad Gita says no. I mean, beyond a particular point, it is irrational to try to curtail human activities because of fear of accidental violence. It's actually not practical. Otherwise, you cannot even live. So what is the solution? Yes. So that is what Krishna is going to come to. And that is what Krishna is hinting at. So Krishna is trying to take this discussion forward by trying to make Arjuna understand that don't think simply performing your duties well solves all your problems. No, it does not. And that is where the transition happens between religion and spirituality. And what is that transition? The transition is where the living entity comes to the realization that it is not about simply becoming happy in this world, because there is no such state of perfect happiness or perfect state of perfect activity in this world. Yes, you can go to some extent of maximizing your good activities, but this world is always going to be shades of gray. So to try to achieve perfection in an imperfect world, in the Dukkhalayam, is not going to work. So Arjuna is being told by Krishna that Arjun, you are worried about sin. Yes, if you do your duty properly by fighting, definitely you can avoid the sin of not neglecting your duty. But don't think that no sin will accrue, because the nature of the material world is sin will come. Somehow or the other, even as you breathe, sin will come. Even as you eat, sin will come. Even as your ratha is going, sin will come. How are you going to avoid all of that? That is why Arjun, because I want your greatest good, now I am going to explain to you that process, that knowledge, that buddhi, having taken shelter of, if you perform your activities, your duties, according to that consciousness, according to that intelligence, then you can be free from the bondage of karma. That's very beautiful. And this brings us to the important understanding that both good and bad karma in this world are actually bad. From a spiritual perspective, both are bad. Why? Because both are binding. Binding to what? Binding us to the cycle of birth and death. Binding us to take another body in this world. Because even if you have good karma, you still have to take birth. And birth means, birth itself is a misery. Birth will automatically be accompanied by old age, disease, death. Adi Daivik, Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmik miseries. And when you are born, no matter how hard you try, you will commit more karma. Both bad and good. And again, the cycle perpetuates. It's a never-ending cycle. So very important, point number one cannot achieve a state of perfect good activity or perfect happy situation in this world. Point number one. Second is, one cannot escape from this bondage of repeated birth and death in this world. The bondage of being caught up in the cycle of samsara, one cannot escape simply by doing good karma. And this is a very big misconception. People think I will work very hard and do all my duties, and then I will get moksha by doing all my duties. Krishna said, no. Krishna said, one does not get free simply by doing one's duties, but one can become free from bondage by performing one's duties in a particular consciousness. So Arjuna is being told by Krishna, let me now explain to you what is that consciousness. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, when you perform your duties in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of work. Now spiritual talk begins. Of course, soul is a base, is the basis of spiritual talk, but many people know about soul, but they don't ask, I am soul, so what? For them, they think I am soul means, yes, I will have some rebirth. So now I have to think about how to go to heaven after this body dies. That is where their, deduction of what I am a soul means in terms of what I need to do. But no, it is far beyond that. If I am a soul, one must understand deeper, why am I put into this kind of a situation? Why am I put into an imperfect situation if I am a perfect spiritual soul? So this kind of inquiry, Brahma Jigyasa, is the beginning of spiritual life. And Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to rise that platform of spirituality and not simply being trapped at the platform of simply doing one's material duties in a nice way. And then Krishna starts glorifying this process of performing duty in this consciousness, the Buddhi Yoga consciousness. In verse 2.40, he says, very beautifully, he says, this process is so powerful. He says, Neha bhikramana shosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Arjuna, this process of Buddhi Yoga that I'm about to describe to you, this is so powerful. This has such a profound influence on the soul that if a person, a living entity, even attempts this process of Buddhi Yoga even little bit, whatever little progress he makes on this path is never lost. Never means never ever. It is not like karma. Karma means I perform good karma. When I enjoy the results of the good karma, it is gone. Isn't it? Let's say I get a big bonus at the end of the year in my job. Then I say, wow, I got such a nice bonus. Let me now do a 1 month road trip in Europe. So after I do that 1 month road trip in Europe, when I come back, my bonus is gone. Of course, I got something in return, but it's gone. But spiritual activities are not like that. Spiritual activities do not, like material activities, give their fruit and disappear. Spiritual activities leave a permanent, indelible impression on the soul. The credit of the transformation of consciousness will remain with the soul forever. Swalpam api asya dharmasya. Swalpa means even very little. Asya dharmasya, this dharma of Buddhi Yoga, trayate mahato bhayat, and it can save you from the greatest fear. Mahato bhayat. What is the greatest fear? The greatest fear is not that I will lose the job, or what happens if I get COVID-19, or what if Trump gets re-elected. These are not the greatest fears. Or what will happen in the Sushant Singh Rajput case. Will the criminals get caught? No, these are all, fancy things. Of course, They may have their relevance in the world. I'm not demeaning or minimizing anything. But this is not the fear that we are talking about. What is the fear we are talking about? What is that greatest fear from a spiritual perspective in the evolution of the soul? The greatest fear is if the soul, if the living entity does not utilize the human form of life for the purpose that it is designed, which is for the sake of a higher spiritual inquiry, then the greatest risk is that the soul will lose the human form of life and go to a lower species. Now, why that is such a bad thing? That is such a dangerous thing because once you go to a lower form of life, you do not have the intelligence to come out from that situation. You are trapped. Only human form of life is given the intelligence to evolve to a higher state. If you go down, you're trapped. You have to evolve slowly through the lower species. You may think, no, no, it's okay. Nice. I will become a crow. What is the problem? I'll become a dog. It's nice. Not so bad. The problem is that people, it may seem like a very romantic idea from where we are sitting. That it's a wonderful idea to be, an animal. But the reality is that animals are actually always living in a state of fear. Life in the lower species is full of fear. It's a jungle Raj. You understand what is jungle Raj? Any moment you can get eaten by anybody. Of course, it's not that in human form of life the danger is not there, it's there. But in the animal life, it is much more. You see, even a bird. Have you ever seen a bird eat a meal peacefully? Or have you seen an animal eat a meal peacefully? After every bite, it will raise its head up, look in all four directions, make sure it is safe and nobody is waiting to eat it. And then it will eat the next bite and quickly look around again in all directions. Yes. That is the state of consciousness in the animal life. So, we may think, oh, so nice, so nice. No, it's not actually so nice. Once when Prabhupada was speaking in the West, he was trying to make some people understand this. And after all his explanations, one young boy still stood up and said, no, I think it is fine to become a dog. And then Prabhupada said, what to do? Okay, he said, yes, I give you my blessings. Because if after all explanation, you are so spiritually unevolved that you cannot understand, what can we do? We can only help a person to a particular point. So the greatest fear is to go into this lower species where one is forced into miserable states, miserable yonis, and one has no way of escaping. And who is put into these species? Those living entities who do not use their God-given special opportunity, this human form of life, in the appropriate way. But Krishna says in this verse, Krishna says it is guaranteed that even if you attempt this buddhi yoga, this bhakti yoga, this process of at least trying to act a little bit, trying to act without attachment to the results of your activities. You try, even if you don't succeed very well, try a little bit. I guarantee it that you will not go to lower species. You will guaranteed get a human form of life. You will guaranteed get a human form. So this is a good news for all of us. So that means at least all of us who are in the class here are assured at least the least attainment. Of course, we'll definitely get much more than that, but at least we are guaranteed we'll get a human form. We'll not go to a lower state because we are listening with interest to the message of the Lord. So this is a very encouraging verse. Neha Vikramanashosti Pratyavayo na vidyate. Because the reality is that if one performs all one material duties perfectly, but doesn't take to the spiritual life, actually what is gained? One still continues in the cycle of birth and death. Sadly, in this world, people glorify other people who are in ignorance, glorify other people who are in ignorance by saying, "Oh, he led such a wonderful life. See how hard he worked, how high position he attained, how he brought up his family, how he did this, how he did that." All those things are okay in terms of material attainments. Is that something which is contributing towards the evolution of the soul? No, it is keeping the soul trapped. It is perpetuating the cycle of birth and death. So a person who is truly intelligent, who is spiritual, he understands that even if I'm unable to do all my duties perfectly, it's not that we should do like that, but even if I do not do my duties perfectly, but I take to the spiritual process, even if I fail in the spiritual process, failing in the spiritual process after trying is a better outcome than performing all your material duties perfectly in life but not doing anything spiritually. I am not saying this. The Srimad Bhagavat is saying this. Tyaktva swadharmam charanambujam harer bhajan apakvo atha pate tato yadi yatra kva va bhadram abhud amushyakim kovartha apto abhajatam swadharmatah. It essentially means what I just described. So what is the use of doing all your duties perfectly if one doesn't take shelter of the Lord? But if one fails to perform his duties properly, but has made in the process of trying to become spiritual, he somehow neglected some duties. And he also failed even performing his spiritual duties perfectly. Even then, he is still victorious. Because acting on the spiritual platform of the soul is much, much more valuable than any amount of great feats performed at the level of the body. Why? Because all material activities and the results are ultimately going to end, but spiritual activity and the results remain eternally. But this kind of determination to remain on the spiritual path is not easy. Krishna explains, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahu shakhayanantascha buddhayo avyavasayinam. Krishna explains that those who are on this path of spiritual life, they are very focused. He's talking about those who are serious, not those who are, just playing around, dabbling with spiritual life. That also, even a little bit of dabbling can still give us human form of life. That is the glory of the spiritual path. But those who are serious about spiritual attainment, they are very focused. They are very resolute. And their aim is one. They are very convinced this is the way to go. They are very convinced that no amount of material perfection can give them the state of happiness that they are looking for. And all others who do not have this consciousness, who do not have this clarity of vision, their intelligence is many branched. Why is it many branched? Because they keep trying different things to be happy. One day they try this, then they fail to become happy. Then they try something else, they fail to be happy. Then they try something else. Many branched, they're trying this, that, this, that. Some people think, as they say, once I finish my education and I get into a job, I'll be happy. So they work hard until they finish their education. They get into the job, they become more miserable. So, oh, maybe this was not what I should have got. Maybe after I retire, I'll be happy. After they retire, they realize, oh, actually nobody's bothering about me anymore. My children are also not bothering about me. Again, they become miserable. So no matter what goal one aspires for materially. Eventually, one after another, one exhausts, and it's like a mirage in the desert. But those who are not fortunate enough to come in the contact of those who are saintly, they keep on unendingly experimenting life after life after life, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. But they do not come to the conclusion that actually maybe I'm looking in the wrong place for happiness. They never think that if I'm the soul and I'm not this body, why am I looking for happiness at the level of the body? They don't ask themselves. But those who are serious, they are very clear. Material happiness will come and go. Material karma will give temporary results. Yes, I will do my duties, but at the same time, I want to make sure I achieve the supreme goal, which is a perfect realization of my spiritual position. And the process for that is Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So that strong faith is important. Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Kohe Sudruda Nischay Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krita Hai. The Chaitanya Charitamrita gives a very beautiful definition of this faith. It says, faith means having that firm conviction that if I simply execute Krishna consciousness perfectly, which means if I do my spiritual duties perfectly, automatically all other things will be taken care of. Automatically all other things will be taken care of. Isn't that what Krishna also says? The Bhagavad Gita says, Ananyasyantayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityaviyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. If you perfectly execute Krishna consciousness, all your other things I will take care. You don't have to worry. Everything will be managed. Your material needs will be managed. Your spiritual needs will be managed. All your past karma will be managed. Everything will be managed. That is why those who are serious are very convinced that all I need to do is to be steadfast on this path. Vasudevah Sarvam Iti. This state of firm resolution, this state of firm faith comes when one evolves in knowledge to a significant degree. This is not so easy to get. One comes to the conclusion, some realization, not just a theoretical knowledge, some realization, yes, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. One who understands that the Lord is the root of everything and all I have to do is to water the root, they become very, very focused in spiritual life because they understand, let me focus on watering the root rather than go around jumping on the tree from one leaf and one branch and trying to water them. Many people are attracted by so many other things in this world that they remain irresolute. They are unable to fix their mind on spiritual life. That's why they'll come for a class, they'll listen a little bit and they'll say, yes, 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 I want to be spiritual. But as soon as they step out, the mind is again in 100 direction. I have to do this, I have to get this, then I'll be happy. This will make me happy, that will make me happy. Many branched intelligence. And Krishna explains this in 2.42 and 2.43. He says, Yam imam pushpitam vachah pravadanti avipaschitah vedavad rata partha nanyadasti tivadinah kamatmanah swargapara janma karma phalapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishwarya gatim prati. Those who are not developed in spiritual understanding, they get very attracted by all these material benefits. The Vedas speak of so many material benefits also. They say you do this puja, you'll get this. You do this, you can go to Swarga. You will get power by if you do this. You'll get wealth if you do this. They get so attracted. Wow, I can get long life, I can get wealth. And even though some of them may be religious, they take to religious process just to get these kind of benefits. And they become so enamored by these kind of mentions in the scriptures that they think that this is all that is there in the scriptures. This is the goal. Like what we said earlier, right? They think that I simply have to do my duty well and then I can enjoy. What else is there about religion? Krishna says these people get attracted to the flowery words of the Vedic scriptures. Actually, the Vedic scriptures speak about all these things. But the Vedic scriptures speak about all these things because they have a particular purpose. Because they want to gradually encourage materialistic people to slowly start taking to spiritual activities. So religious activities becomes like a stepping stone. But sometimes what happens is that stepping stone itself, they become entrapped in. Why? Because they do not take association of saintly people. The point is, unless we take association of saintly people to develop proper discrimination, to develop proper spiritual intelligence is actually very difficult. So Krishna is mentioning here, people just get enamored by the various rituals and material benefits in religion, but they forget what is the true purpose of religion. The true purpose of religion is not simply to perform duties and rituals to achieve material benefits. The true purpose is to come to the realization of what is one's true identity. To come to the point of understanding that I'm the soul. I cannot be happy in a material environment. Why am I always trying to do activities on the platform of matter? My material duties are related to my identity as a body, but I am not this body. I'm a soul. What are my activities based on my real identity that I'm a soul? Living entity does not inquire. Yes, material duties are important, but they are still related to the body. They are not related to the soul, and that is why they are temporary. But those who are too attracted to material things, those who are too attracted to material comforts and enjoyments, for them to understand this and for them to be fixed in spiritual practice is very difficult. Very difficult. Krishna says, Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya aparita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhau navidhiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, Aishwarya, Bhoga and Aishwarya. And those who are bewildered by such things, Taya aparita chetasam, Vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhau na vidiyate. They cannot be fixed in spiritual understanding. It's very difficult. Their mind is so agitated by all these things. They are unable to understand and appreciate that there is something higher. And that is why they continue to remain trapped. They cannot achieve the state of samadhi. Samadhi means samyak adiyate asmin atma tattvam yatatmayam. When the consciousness is fixed in the understanding of the true self. True self. What is my true self? My true self is not Kamlesh Borkar. That is the name of my material body. My true self is Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas. That I am a part and parcel of Krishna and I am eternally a servant of Krishna. That is my self. But most people remain trapped within the bounds of religion, which is aimed at material enjoyment. They never become spiritual. And most of religion, including the Vedas or any other religion, most of religion is actually talking about these kind of rituals. Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhava Arjuna, Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. Krishna is telling Arjuna, most of the Vedas are dealing with these kind of subjects. And these kind of subjects are related to the modes of nature, Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamogun. Gradually, the scriptures want to elevate people who are in lower consciousness. Most of mankind is in the lower modes. They have to be gradually elevated. That's why all these things are given. But unfortunately, these people just remain within that. But Arjun, you are an evolved soul. You don't remain in that level. For you, it is not just about performing your duty well. I want you to come to a higher platform. You should become free from dualities. You have to perform your activities in a way so that you don't remain entrapped. You have to be able to perform your duties without attachment. And that is possible only when you become free from dualities and from all anxieties without worrying whether you will achieve victory or defeat, whether you will gain or whether you will be killed. You should not worry. If you're simply detached and you're performing your duty, being established in the understanding of your true identity, then you can transcend. Then you can make proper spiritual progress. So Arjun, come to that point and do not remain trapped in religious formularies, which are simply uh, uh, keeping one within the realm of matter. Actually, Arjun, all these religious duties which are given in scriptures are actually meant to gradually bring a person to a higher level. But most people forget that there is a higher purpose. But those who are intelligent, they know that all these lower rituals are designed by the scriptures to gradually bring a person to a higher level. So rather than acquire money and other benefits through a sinful way, scriptures encourage, if you follow this ritual, if you worship the Lord in this way, then you can get this material benefit. And it is true. Not that it is not true. It is true. And when the living entity who gets attracted to religious rituals in this manner performs those rituals, the hope is that through coming in contact with the Lord and the rituals and the mantras and the names, gradually, by hearing so many mantras and philosophy and discussion and katha, slowly some good sense will enter his intelligence. Isn't it? At least in India, I don't know about Malaysia. In India, after every puja, what is said? कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृति स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै Narayana samarpayami. Ultimately, I have to come to the point of surrendering everything to Narayan. And what I have to do? Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Correct? Achyutam Keshavam Ram Narayanam Krishna Damodaram Vasudevam Harim Sridharam Madhavam Gopika Vallabham Janaki Nayakam Ramachandram Bhaje. That is the conclusion. Actually, that is the most important part of the puja. We are so interested in all the other parts. But the last 5 minutes is the most important part of the puja, because that is giving the conclusion of all their rituals. You must come to this conclusion. You must come to the point of chanting the names of the Lord, worshipping the Lord, working towards surrendering to Him. If your rituals are not taking you in that direction, your rituals are actually spiritually a waste. That's why in verse 46 of the second chapter, the Lord says, Yavanartha udappane sarvatah samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. One must always understand the purpose behind the rituals. Whatever purpose can be served by a small well, the same purpose can very easily be served by a big lake, a big reservoir of water, isn't it? There are a few things you can do in a well. You cannot do everything in a well. It's a small body of water. But you can do all those activities in a reservoir of water and many more. Similarly, one who understands the real purpose behind the Vedic rituals can easily attain all the benefits which are actually meant as the real goal behind these rituals. So those who are actually smart spiritually, smart doesn't mean just who got good marks in exam. Smart means those who have come to this conclusion, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Those who have come to the conclusion that all the rituals are simply stepping stones to bring me closer to the realization that I have to continuously connect to the Lord through the process of devotional service. Kayena vacha manasendriya. Through kaya, through this body, through my mind, through my indriyas. Buddhyatmana, through my intelligence, through my mind, Atmana. Here the Atma means refers to the mind. Prakriti Swabhavad, whatever my material nature may be. Yadyat karomi sakalam parasmi. Narayanati samarpayami. Whatever I do, through any of these means, everything must be performed as an offering of love to Narayan. Isn't that the conclusion? That is what Krishna is telling him. Arjuna, don't simply do your duty properly, but do it in the perfect consciousness of detachment. And higher still, do it for me. Narayanayati samarpayami. Very, very beautiful verse. And a person who comes to this conclusion and who acts in this consciousness, he doesn't even need to follow any rituals. He may still follow. It's not that we have to become, rebels and reject all rituals and throw them away. But the point is, if you have already come to that conclusion, then that ritual is not really necessary. That is why the scriptures say that a living entity has already come to the point of regularly chanting the holy names of the Lord. Because what is the conclusion of the whole puja? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And you are already doing that all the time. Every day you are chanting 16 rounds. So it should be understood that this person has already performed all rituals, all yajnas, all penances, has visited all holy places. That is why he is firmly fixed in the conclusion of all these rituals mentioned in the Vedas. And that is why such a person is considered somebody who has gone beyond the rituals mentioned in the Vedas. Elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually re-emphasizes this point. And that is the reality, because actually in Kali Yuga, what more can we do? The simple process and the most effective process is that of chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And then the Lord says, very beautiful, one of the most famous verses of the Bhagavad Gita, 2.47. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhu ma te sangostva karmani. Arjun, don't be worried about the outcome. You just focus on doing your duty perfectly, your prescribed duties. And don't be lazy simply because you are not desiring the fruits of your activities. Don't be lazy. Don't be attached to not doing your duty properly. And also understand that ultimately you are not the cause of the fruits of your activities. Ma karma phala heturbhu. If you try to see yourself as the doer and the enjoyer, you will get bound. So don't do like that. You do your duty perfectly, but don't bother about the fruits. And at the same time, don't be lazy. Which means do your duty with enthusiasm and detachment. Then that will take you higher and higher in spiritual consciousness. So there are many kinds of karma. You can read the purport. There are a lot of explanations of what are prescribed duties, capricious work, inaction. Then also within prescribed duties, there are various subdivisions like, everyday, daily activities, emergency activities, desired activities. There are various classifications. So you can go through that. In the interest of time, I'll move ahead. But the key point here is the Lord is exhorting Arjun. Don't be fussy about the fruits. You are not the cause of the fruits. The only thing in your hands is to do your activity properly, because the fruit is given by higher forces and is based on so many considerations which are beyond your control. That is why what you should do, Arjun, I want you to Do your karma perfectly with a perfect equipoised consciousness. Equipoise means not concerned about outcome, not attached to the result. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhi asiddhayor samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. This equanimity itself is yoga, Arjun. This equanimity of consciousness while performing your duty itself is yoga. So be situated in this yoga. Yogastha. Yogastha means be situated in this yoga. Yogastha kuru karmani. Sangam tyaktva. Sangam means giving up attachment. And be equal. Now one may think, oh, this sounds very simple, but obviously it is not so easy. It is not easy because we are still attracted to the fruits of activities. That's why it's not easy. And why are we attracted to the fruits of activities? We are attracted because we are not yet convinced that the fruits of activities are actually the cause of our bondage and not the cause of our happiness. Once, through proper knowledge and purification, we become convinced that, Arey Baba, I was thinking this will give me happiness. This is actually going to try, bind me up more. Then one does activities for Atma Shuddhaye, for purification and spiritual evolution. That becomes the driver, not the fruit of the activity. And this Krishna will clarify in the subsequent chapters. So this is not a very artificial thing. This is a very practical thing. But that motivation has to come, and that motivation comes through proper spiritual knowledge, which is acquired by spiritual practice in the association of devotees. Then it is possible to work in this consciousness. This is not a cheap thing. It is not that simply after hearing Bhagavad Gita class, you can go home and turn a switch. Now I am going to do detached action. Rebo. I have changed the channel. It's not so easy because there is so much conditioning, there is so much attachment that can only be undone through a lot of purification, which is a fair amount of work. But it is possible. The fastest way to do that is through taking to the process of Bhakti Yoga in the association of devotees. So Krishna is telling Arjun, your duty as a Kshatriya is to fight. So do your duty. But do it according to my instructions. Yogastha in connection to Durena Yavaram Karma Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya Buddhau Sharanamanvicha Kripanaha Falahetavaha. Arjuna, hopefully you have understood by now that those who work because they want fruits of their activities are actually misers. A very interesting thing he says, Kripanaha Falahetavaha. Very interesting. And this point is worth reflecting on. If we simply understand this point, we would have understood a great deal. Kripanaha Falahetava means those who are working for the fruits of activities are misers. Misers means you have so much and you can get so much, but you settle for something, very, very insignificant. So what is insignificant? The fruits of the activities are insignificant. And what is great? Working without attachment for the fruits of activities is great. Why? Because that is what leads to liberation. Those who are attached to the fruits of activities are simply binding themselves up, not knowing. They are tempted by the fruits and they become trapped. That is why Arjun, Duren Yavaram Karma Buddhi Yoga, using this Buddhi Yoga, using this spiritual intelligence, keep this kind of materialistic work far away. Buddhi Yoga. He avaram karma, this kind of abominable action. What kind of action is abominable? Actually, all activity which is materialistic is abominable. Whether externally it may be good or bad. Buddhau Sharanam Anvicha, take shelter of the spiritual intelligence. Because those who think that they will achieve auspiciousness by performing attached work are actually very foolish. They are actually misers. One can achieve much greater happiness by being detached from the fruits of activities rather than being attached. And that is the beginning of spiritual realization. बुद्धि युक्तो जहाति इह उभे सुकृत दुष्कृते तस्माद योगाय युज्यस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलम. When you have this spiritual intelligence, this buddhi yoga, this devotional service, when you perform activities like that, you will get rid of both good and bad activities. Because when you perform your duties in this consciousness, Arjun, then your activities do not result in karma at all, either good or bad. Remember, I was telling you, Arjun, that in this material world, no matter how hard you try, you will always end up committing sins. But if you perform your activities in buddhi yoga, I guarantee you, you will never be touched by sin of any sort. Even accidental sins will not be touched, because you will be performing in a spiritual consciousness. When a person performs activities in spiritual consciousness, buddhi yukto, then one doesn't produce any kind of karma. That is why strive, Arjun, strive for working in this consciousness. Strive for this. Because what is yoga? Yoga is about learning the art of working in this way. Yoga karmasu kaushalam is the art of doing work. What kind of art? The art of working with great enthusiasm, with determination, not being lazy, with great determination and enthusiasm, using one's skills, using one's knowledge, but remaining detached. That is the skill. And what is the impetus for that? The impetus for that is to dedicate everything to the divine, or at least in the base minimum is for liberation of the soul. कर्मजं बुद्धि युक्ता ही फलम त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्म बंध विनिर्मुक्ता पदम गच्छन्ति अनामयम. When a person engages in this kind of work, and great devotees and sages have done this, they have been able to free themselves from all the bondage of karma, and they have been able to free themselves from janma bandha vinirmukta, from the cycle of birth and death, and they have been able to achieve the padam anamayam. What kind of padam? That state which is without miseries. That's what we want. We want a state of perfect happiness without any misery. Arjun, that is not possible in this world. You have to achieve that transcendental state by working in this consciousness. That is why one must take full shelter of the Lord and engage in the process of devotional service, by which one can dedicate all one's activities to the service of the Lord. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatirishyati, vyatitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When you understand this clearly, Arjun, all that I've explained to you, your intelligence will get sorted out and become very clear. Sometimes even after studying all the Vedas, people get confused because they get so much attracted to all the flowery language in the Vedas. They get attracted to the rituals. They laugh at those who are chanting the holy names and glorify those who are doing big yajnas. But they don't understand that the goal of all rituals is come to this simple conclusion of chanting the holy names of the Lord, worshipping the Lord, loving the Lord, and dedicating all one's activities to the Lord. So when you actually understand this point properly, when your intelligence has passed through this delusion, then you will become indifferent to all these rituals, because then you will be clear as to what is the actual conclusion of all scriptures and what is ultimately the most desirable activity. Shruti vipratipanna yada sthasyasi nischala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. And in that state of consciousness, which is fixed and not distracted by the material benefits mentioned in the Vedas, then you can achieve a divine state of consciousness where your intelligence can remain fixed in that self-realization. And that is necessary. That kind of conviction, that kind of understanding and realization is necessary, then you will achieve that steady consciousness. Tada yogam avapsisi. Samadhava achala buddhi, that fixed intelligence, which is fixed in spiritual understanding, that you will attain once you have come to this point. Okay, so we will stop here. After speaking this, actually Krishna takes a pause, and he has encouraged Arjuna by saying that you have to move higher. Don't get stuck simply in doing duty. Come to a point, a higher level. Do duty as a yoga. That is what he's trying to say. Do duty as a yoga. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. It has to be done with a special art. And what is that art? Don't do it for yourself. Do it with detachment. And do it for a higher cause. Do it for me. Then you can become free, and then you can achieve the real goal of life. And then Arjuna starts from 2.54 onwards, a very interesting section on the symptoms of those who have that kind of a perfect consciousness. So that we will discuss the next week. So I'll take a pause here. Sorry, I overshot by 5-6 minutes. So I'll take a pause here. Any questions, any comments?
Yes, Prabhuji, I have a doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Prabhuji, if I do my spiritual activities perfectly, but fail to do my material duties, what would be the result?
Okay, so there are two things. One, what the verse here mentioned is, even if one fails to do one's material duties but performs spiritual duties to some extent, one is not lost, because spiritual duties always give a permanent result. But the point here is not to trivialize or to say that it is okay to neglect material activities. That is not the message here. The message here is to emphasize that even a little bit of spiritual activity gives a better result than performing all material activities perfectly. A little bit of spiritual activity gives better result than all material activities done perfectly. So if we do not perform material activities and we are and those activities are our prescribed duty, then we incur sin. Okay. So of course our spiritual activities will take us to a higher level, but at the same time, if we neglect material duties whimsically, then we incur sin. If we fully take shelter of the Lord, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, if we fully take shelter of the Lord and give up all material duties, then if we properly fully take shelter of the Lord, one becomes immediately free from all material duties. But usually that is a more elevated state of consciousness. That is not something which most of us can immediately jump to. So what we should do is, yes, we must continue our spiritual duties, but at the same time we must connect our material duties to the Lord by spiritualizing our life, by spiritualizing our family, our homes, our activities, our association, our food, everything. If we spiritualize it properly, then when we perform our material duties, they can actually be spiritualized. And that is what Krishna tells Arjuna. You spiritualize your fighting by fighting for me rather than fighting for yourself. So the short answer is, if you neglect your material duties, in general, yes, you get sin. But in a very specific situation, if there is a conflict between a material duty and a spiritual duty, then one must, take up the spiritual duty, because that's a higher duty than the material duty. But the actual implementation of this step requires proper guidance from spiritual teachers. Otherwise, the tendency, most of us, is to whimsically neglect our duties, more out of laziness rather than true detachment or from matter and attachment to the Lord. If one becomes whimsical in the name of spirituality, one will suffer the reactions of neglecting one's duties. Do you understand?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Very good. I'm impressed that you understood this. Yes, thank you, Hamsini. Yes, Gangotri Mataji, you want to say something? Yes, your hand raised.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just wanted to inquire since the word laziness came up a few times. So, yeah. So, what is I mean, somebody, let's say they are religious and they are trying to be practicing devotional service, but to some extent they have some kind of, you know, maybe certain laziness factor there and they're not doing as much as probably they can do. So how is that? How does that work out?
So the way to develop more and more inspiration and more attraction is always by more and more exposure in the association of other sincere devotees. See, that is why if we remain in an isolated environment by ourselves, if we meaning whoever, right, remain in an isolated environment thinking that I will just quietly practice my own spiritual life without taking association, then our impetus and our growth will be very, very slow. And that is a reality. So, laziness is overcome when one understands the importance of something, right? Why does a student overcome his laziness and study hard when exam comes? Because he realizes, oh, he understands this is serious. If I don't pass and I don't do well, this is the consequence. So then they become serious. So it requires some spiritual seriousness to overcome the laziness which brings some lethargy in spiritual activities. So that seriousness gradually comes when we go on hearing these topics, isn't it? Sometimes you may be wondering why Prabhuji is repeating what he has said again and again and again. We are repeating because after hearing 1000 times also we don't understand. Yeah. And I'm also trying to understand. I'm not just talking about you. I'm also still trying to understand what I am speaking. Okay. So that's a continuous process. Because this yoga karmasu kaushalam, to be able to have that firm conviction that ultimately I cannot be happy by fruitive activities. Actually, that is a very, very important step in the evolution of the soul. And that will not come unless one very, very seriously in the association of devotees, take shelter of the Bhagavatam, the Gita, the service to the Vaishnavas, the worship of the Lord, chanting of the holy names. All these processes one has to take seriously shelter. And one will not take serious shelter unless one is always in the association of devotees who are inspiring and encouraging us all the time. Otherwise, one will be like, you have heard of Birbal's Khichdi? What is Birbal's Khichdi? Birbal's Khichdi story is a very interesting story. Do you have 2-3 minutes and I'll tell you the story of Birbal's Khichdi?
I'm okay.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay. Those who want to eat their own khichdi and dinner, they can drop off. I'll tell you briefly about Birbal's khichdi. It's a very interesting khichdi. So anyway, the story has one purpose, but in our context, the moral is different. So I'm going to shorten it. So it so happened this Akbar Birbal stories, right? So it so happened that Akbar had once, given announced a reward that whoever stays in the Yamuna in freezing water during the month of December and can remain there all night long, he will give them a special expensive some big reward. So one person stood, one poor Brahman, he stood, and next day he came to take the reward, and somebody complained, one minister complained, no, he didn't follow the rule properly because at a long distance away there was a temple. On the temple there was a lamp, and he was looking at the lamp, so he was getting some heat from the lamp, and that's why he cheated. So Akbar said, yeah, that is correct. So no reward for you. So then Birbal was very upset. So he decided to teach Jahapana Akbar a lesson. So what he did, next day he called Akbar for lunch in his house. So he came to his house and then for lunch. And then long time happened, Birbal was not serving the lunch. So he asked Akbar asked Birbal, what happened? He said, no, it's being cooked. It's being cooked. So another half an hour, 1 hour passed. He said, what happened? Where is lunch? No, it's being cooked. It's being cooked. Why? How long? 2 hours? Not. No, no, it's still cooking. It's still cooking. So he went on saying that. Then finally Akbar was so hungry and angry that he shouted at Birbal and said, "Take me to the kitchen. I want to see what you are doing." So when he went to the kitchen, he saw that there was a fire down, small fire down, and way up 10 feet above, one pot was hanging of khichdi. And he said, "See, it's cooking." And Akbar chastised him, says, "You idiot! However will, there will never ever be a time when this khichdi will get cooked." Because barely any heat is reaching, and whatever is reaching is not enough to cook the khichdi. So most of our spiritual life is like that. Understand? Of course, Akbar in that story, he realizes his mistake and then he gives the reward to that other Brahman. That's that story. But for us, the story is if we start cooking our spiritual life like that, by focusing mainly on rituals, by diluting the intensity of our spiritual practices, then our khichdi will never get cooked. At most, the pot will become slightly warm from outside, like Birbal's khichdi. So how to cook it properly so that heat comes in the association of devotees? When we associate with those who are more serious than us, more purified than us, more attached to the Lord than us, more learned than us, then in their association and by serving them, we make advancement in spiritual life. That is the process. So the answer is that for such people, we create good fortune. We means the devotees create good fortune by giving opportunities more and more and extending themselves to give opportunities to such people to be in the association of devotees so that they get more and more inspired. And then the laziness goes over time. And the best way to encourage others is by becoming wonderful, happy devotees ourselves. And when we become a wonderful example of a successful khichdi, well-cooked khichdi, then others will also want to cook their khichdi. So that is another good point. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu, perfect. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the inspiring story. Prabhuji, I don't understand about Karma Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, and then, and at the same time, Prabhupada referred to them as a devotional service. So,
Okay.
how are these both yoga are different than the Bhakti Yoga?
Okay. My suggestion is we will discuss this as we progress through chapter 3, 4, 5. I will not go into that right now because it will be a bit difficult and confusing. But for your benefit, I will give you a very simple explanation for now. If you understand it, it's fine. Otherwise, you have to wait for the subsequent classes. Okay? So the simple understanding is that in the early stages of Buddhi Yoga, one is doing Karma Yoga because one is still attached to work. So one is taking up to the process of offering the fruits of activities. But at an advanced stage of yoga, one is not motivated by one's attachment to the activity itself or to the karma itself, but one is motivated or driven by the desire to please the Lord. And that is why it is called Bhakti Yoga. So externally, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga may not always appear clearly different at an external level. But it is a matter of what is actually the motivating consciousness. The motivating consciousness for Bhakti Yoga is to please the Lord, and the motivating consciousness for Karma Yoga is still attachment to performance of work, but there is some detachment from the results, and one is willing to offer those results to the Lord because there is some sense of affection or faith in the Lord. So at least that's a beginning point. Yeah. So that's how it begins there and then goes towards Bhakti Yoga. Do you understand that?
Yes, Prabhu. And the Buddhi Yoga?
Buddhi Yoga is that whole, of course, Prabhupada explains Buddhi Yoga as Bhakti Yoga because that is the culmination of that process. But in a broader sense, Buddhi Yoga is that whole range, that whole spectrum. That's what Krishna says here, right? One path is the Sankhya and then there is the Yoga. So Yoga begins at the early stages by detachment from the fruits of activities, and the highest stage is that all activities are directly dedicated to the pleasure of the Supreme. So that's the whole spectrum.
Okay, Prabhu. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
So
Thank
in
you.
the broadest sense, Buddhi Yoga is the full spectrum in the broadest sense, but obviously the Buddhi in the lower sense of in the lower part of the spectrum is not as fixed as it is in the higher part. So the end goal is, is perfect Krishna consciousness.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, welcome. Okay, anything else? Okay, so thank you to everyone, and you can all now have your khichdi. It's cooked by now. Okay, Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai.
Jai Shri Prabhupada ki, Jai
Jai.
Samaveta Gaura Bhakti. Jai Gaura Premanand.
Bol.